Good evening, everybody. It's 6:30. Welcome to the Audit and Accounts Committee. I have a few items of housekeeping to deal with. Fire evacuation procedures. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the rear of the room. Go down the stairs unless otherwise instructed and meet in War Memorial Park. The meeting is being webcast live on the internet. Is that on, Phil?
Yeah.
Great. Mobile phones, please switch your phones off or to silent. And can I please remind members and officers that to be heard clearly within the room and on the webcast, you must speak directly into your microphone. Great, so welcome to members. Just item 1 on the agenda. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Audit, Katecha and Tom, and we have no substitutions. Are there any other apologies for absence I may have missed? I don't think so. Great. Just before I move on to that, I just wanted to welcome Councillor Blackberry, who's now a permanent member. Sounds like the Security Council, doesn't it? A permanent member of the Audit and Accounts Committee. And Councillor Karen Watts is now substitute. And to thank Councillor Minas Bound for being Vice Chair and for chairing the last meeting so efficiently. Thank you, Simon. So declarations of interest, item 2. Are there any declarations of interest? I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on to item 3, which is urgent matters. Are there any urgent matters? Again, nothing. So we'll move on to item 4, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of June 2025. Does the committee agree that the minutes of the meeting held on 23rd of June 2025 are an accurate record? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Fantastic. Just give me a second while I initial these. Moving on to item 5, Internal Audit Progress Report, July to September 2025. I'll ask Richard Bevan, the officer, to introduce the report. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, this is the progress report for the work carried out by the Internal Audit team during July and September, and also includes the current position with outstanding audit recommendations as at the 12th of September. In this period, there were no audit reports which we gave a limited or reasonable assurance on. So all the reports that we've completed are shown in the table in paragraph 3.2 on page 10 of the report, and that shows the number of recommendations that we made and the key points of interest for the committee. I will say there is a link in my report electronically to our SharePoint page, where if you do wish to view all the reports in detail, then you are more than welcome to do so. That link's on page 15 of the report. Concerning recommendations, paragraph 4.1 on page 14 summarises the position of outstanding significant recommendations, and those that are overdue are detailed in Appendix 1, and the remainder which aren't yet overdue are detailed in Appendix 2. So I haven't got anything more to add to that, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Does anybody have any questions about paper 4? Paper 5, sorry. I'm not seeing any questions. So I think we are asked to consider and comment on this report. So are we happy to pass that as considered and commented upon? That's agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is a review of the corporate risk register. I'll ask Paul Gundry to introduce the report. Please, Paul.
Thank you, Chair.
This report is the usual format that you see every 6 months, which is an update on the corporate risk register. Just a couple of things to share with you. We've had one risk change since the report came to you previously, which was back in March, and that's on the cyber risk, which can be the detail that can be found in paragraph 2.2 on page 34, which puts that into a high risk, which I think is a true reflection of where we are and across the country as well. Again, for information, in paragraph 2.4, there's a diagrammatic version of the corporate risk register for you, so you can view that simply. I wasn't going to add any more on the corporate risk register part, but I have also taken the opportunity to review the risk management policy, which we do every 2 years, and there are some minor changes which can be the details are in paragraph 3.1 on page 35. And for information, I've also provided you with a marked up copy of the policy with the changes, which is in appendix 3, which is page 69. I wasn't going to add any more than that, although I would ask the committee to approve the policy if they are happy with the amendments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the risk? Jackie Tustain.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think the issues we still have around this sort of cyber security and IT stuff do seem to keep dragging on. Is this a resourcing issue, and workload and things? And is there anything that's been done to try to finally sort of put this to bed? Because it has, I think they've moved on a couple of times, haven't they? And obviously the cyber stuff is something that's becoming more and more important. We've obviously lost the phone system, didn't we, a while back as well? So all of this is all connected. So any thoughts on that or any sort of answers, that'd be good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You are right. There has been a restructure within IT, which will hopefully help with the implementation of the outstanding recommendations we've got. So, for example, Richard, you'll probably correct me if I get this wrong, but there is a cyber officer now appointed, so it's a dedicated role which we didn't have before. So we anticipate that role will be able to quickly accelerate those outstanding recommendations. I think that's probably all I can say at the moment.
Richard, you'd like to add something?
Just to add, yeah, the comments in the appendix 1 and 2 of my report, we have had updates from the IT service to say we've changed the completion dates to some of the recommendations relating to cyber and the critical systems because, yes, they were waiting to recruit those posts because they are specialists. So now they're in post, we would hope, as Paul said, that we'll see some progress on them. And we're due to do the critical systems and cyber audits very soon anyway. So we would obviously naturally pick up anything that's outstanding as priority, as well as undertaking the audit as we normally would.
Thank you, Councillor Tustain. I think it does give some comfort that that team's been through change. I think the movement of the item further up the risk register, essentially, shines more of a spotlight on it, and I think that is appropriate given the history that Councillor Tustain's outlined. So I don't know if anyone else has any comments or thoughts. Councillor Conquest.
Thank you. Given the nature of the cyber risk, it's difficult for officers to talk about it. Would it be appropriate, or maybe you could discuss with the director if it's appropriate to discuss it in future under confidential matters?
I'm not averse to that. I'm just curious why you feel that that's. I know you have some experience in this area, David. So I'm just curious as to why you think that's particularly sensitive.
Really, just so that we can get some more reassurance, I suppose, without it being broadcast globally on YouTube.
Has anyone else got any thoughts on that? Simon.
I was going to agree with Councillor Conquest, really. There is something about this, isn't it, that says, I don't think we should be content. It's useful to see that it's rising up the risk register, but actually there is something about having a level of confidence and reassurance that it is or will be very soon resolved, and it will drop very quickly down. And I agree with Councillor Conquest, this may not be the right arena for that, but we certainly should try and get it.
Richard, when are you starting, or when do you anticipate you'll complete the audit on the next audit on that one?
Well, the next committee's November. We won't have it done in time for, excuse me, for the November meeting. So it would be sometime. Yeah, I would aim for hopefully before Christmas. But I guess we look at the controls that are in place based on what's in the corporate risk register. So we would give a level of assurance on how we think the controls are working. We wouldn't go into necessarily need to go into specifics of if there was a cyber hack or whatever. I appreciate that would be outside of the remit of what kind of we would do from the control point of view. I guess so. We would still, Paul might probably want to jump in, but we would still report as we do. I guess the issue of what you're raising, it may be a slightly different forum. Yeah.
I guess what I'm thinking is we have, X outstanding items. There's a couple of overdue ones and a handful of ones that aren't overdue but are significant, or orange. And Paul.
Thank you, Chair. You're right, cyber is very important, and again, seeing it as a high risk on our corporate risk register shows that we acknowledge that. It's a national, probably international issue anyway. I am, as I've mentioned previously, on the Business Continuity Steering Group, and cyber is one of those areas that we are very mindful of from a business continuity process. So also we have the cyber ensuring that we minimise the risk or of it happening to us and the impact, but we have also got the business continuity structure in place to, we hope it doesn't happen, to deal with the scenario if it does happen. But I was going to suggest, Chair, that again, with not getting too deep into your request, whether that's something that we could maybe wait to see what comes out of our internal audit review, and then following that, I didn't know whether this committee would be the right committee for that. Obviously, I bow to because if that's more of a scrutiny question, I don't know, I'd just float that one there.
Richard Harbord.
I was only going to say that I think as far as cyber is concerned, it's an unrealistic expectation that it's ever not going to be read. There won't be an authority in the country that it isn't read in. The thing is, it evolves the whole time. People are getting cleverer and cleverer, and so you constantly have to update your controls and your protection. But even so, there is no certainty that if you had an attack, you would be able to fight it off. It's, so it will remain as a high risk. You need to keep alert, and obviously you need to move as things change, but it won't ever become anything less than red.
Paul Gundry.
Thank you, Chair. And I hope the committee can take comfort in as we mentioned previously, with the reorganisation of IT, that they've actually got a dedicated posting position for cyber. I'm
also conscious of the depth of our work programme in November and January meetings, and even the March one's quite busy. We have a particularly thin pack of papers tonight, and we did for the last meeting as well. So I'm inclined to do what Paul Gundry said, which is to wait and see what comes out of the next cyber audit, and then we get a flavour for how many more recommendations there are or are not, and we potentially, because of the restructure, I believe the director now is Katie Salis. We could give her an open invitation to come along in March, and then depending on how Richard's internal audit paper looks, we could make that optional or mandatory or in November time when that, or January when Richard's report comes forward. What people think of that? I know Paul wanted to add something else.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Chair. And I was just going to add what you've just mentioned there, that on the back of our audit report, to remind the committee again that you do have the ability to ask any manager, head of service to the committee to ask for, one, if it's a poor report, why are you there, what are you doing about it, etc. So there's also that hook if you really need it, but hopefully we don't.
Thanks, Paul. I think, the issue with this one is the direction of travel's correct. There's the increased visibility on it as well, which is correct. I think it's just a question of pace, really. And I think actually Richard Harbert's right as well. It's likely to be read for quite some time, if not forever. Is that okay, Councillor Conquest? Are you happy with that?
Yes, that sounds reasonable. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Did Councillor Chatburn have a question as well?
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Is the risk register for the LGR available on the SharePoint site?
You can find it on the Sinbad page, but yeah, where there's a risk management section within that, and you'll find it there. I can send the link to the committee that page if you wish.
Councillor Tustain, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm looking down at the risk around waste, and I see that's been put at red, and the likelihood of it happening at significant 4. And I think the one that comes out, Johnson, that it's to do with the waste vehicles that were to be purchased. I am hoping you're going to reassure us and say that actually, considering it's rolling out next week, that red, as time has gone on since this report was written, has hopefully now dropped at least to an amber and is just reliant on residents putting it in the right bins.
I haven't looked at that risk since I wrote the report. I'm aware that we're looking at October for the change. I did have a brief conversation with the director responsible. We were, we were discussing about whether this should be an amber or high risk this time round. And I advised, and they took the advice that we keep it at high risk this time for this meeting. But once we get through October to see how that progresses, in a week's time, hopefully when we come back to you with the next update, it will be an amber. So hopefully that gives you some encouragement.
That's great. I think we'll consider that part of the paper done, unless anyone's got any final questions. And we'll move on to the risk management policy revision. Does anyone have any questions on the risk management policy revisions? I'm getting shakings of the head, so does the committee agree that it has considered and commented on the report? Agreed. And does the committee agree to approve the changes to the risk management policy? Agreed. Thank you. That's item 6 finished. We'll move on to item 7, which is the Treasury Management 2025-26 Q1 report. I'll ask our Section 151 Officer Adam Swain to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the report on the first quarter of the financial year, which covers the period of 1st of April to 30th of June. I'll go through it at a very high level and then take any questions, but high level forecast income is 5.13 million, which is 0.23 million above the budget of 4.9 million. This is partly due to higher rate of return on investments, which is forecast to be 4.22% versus 4.18% in the budget, and also due to slightly higher balances forecast over the year than we'd expected. Only other bits I'd highlight in the report are table 5 on page 13, which again is our internal benchmarking that's provided by our Treasury Management advisors, that shows our performance of our internal investments, and that shows that our performance is slightly above the benchmarking group with a lower risk rating, which is obviously a positive, and it also shows that we're holding slightly longer term investments where we've been able to fix at higher rates, which will probably serve us better compared to the benchmarking group as base rates have decreased, which they obviously did in September after this report was at the period of this report. That was all I was going to say on it, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Does anyone have any questions? I just have one observation that in the almost, I think, 18 months, 2 years I've been sat here, we continually seem to beat the benchmark. I wonder if, obviously, please pass our thanks on to Mark Dewars and to yourself. We could almost set up a fund management business. It's crazy. I'm not suggesting that, but thank you. Yeah. Does the committee agree to note the Treasury Management Q1 report? That's agreed. Thank you, Adam. So we'll just move on to item 8, which is the Audit and Accounts Work Programme. I touched on this earlier. We have a particularly busy November meeting where the 24-25 accounts will come forward, and we'll have the Annual Property Plan half-year report, another Treasury Management Q2 report, another internal audit progress report, and the fraud update. So I'd anticipate our November meeting to be slightly longer than this one. And then January again, plenty of strategies coming forward. So we really move into the busy season, I guess, for this committee. Are there any questions or comments on the work programme? I'm not seeing any, so it just leaves the last item of business, which is the action log. And there was an item there that rolled over from last time, which I believe Officer Phil Matthews tells me that has been dealt with since, which was to do with waste management.
Yeah.
So I believe that's closed. And Councillor Menis-Bown was kind enough not to add any actions at the last meeting. So that's the first time the action log is empty. So that's rather good news. I feel like I've missed something. I'll call the meeting closed at 18:52. Thank you, everybody. See you in November.